Is my voice audible? I'm just checking it. Is my voice audible? Is my voice audible? Yep, yep, yep. So I just mute myself so the voice doesn't resound. So before we move on to today's lesson, just wait for 3 4 minutes. I just need to do some setting and then we will get started. And thanks for waiting. I know I made it 12:15 and I started at 25 minutes late. I am really grateful that you do understand this one. And we can also wait if someone else joins. So far, I'm the only one, but you never know. Life is all about this. So, um, this was just give me like couple of minutes more. We will just start. Six. I don't understand what that XP means. Be the first one in the leaderboard showing us a good try. Sending a live chat or super chat. Okay, I got one yesterday, so I was kind of happy. Happy, happy, happy. So let's check if my Twitch is streaming. Do, 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 do. That's an offline, dude. No. Let's go, let's go. Well, the time. Just two times. Life or five. I love the same. Life or five. Go live. At two, three, one. Okay, so I think because I'm watching my own life, that's the reason. But it's like interesting. I'm saying it is repeating. So I can mute myself here, and I did mute myself. And I'm just checking if my voice is quite clear here. Hello. Why this collaborativity magic tea? Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? One viewer is trying to recap. I think I need to go for an application that doesn't give this a restream logo. Despite the fact I am going for free, that doesn't change the fact that I do want to make look it really clear. And now I think I need to adjust my camera. Where is the camera source? Why I can't see my camera, dude? Camera. Welcome. Any problem, dude? You might get the backstage. Nobody joined, right? No. Do. Why is my camera not working, dude? Why? This is the stream I started. It should have my camera on it. Why? I can't see my camera. Okay, now. Uh, oh my god. Just give me a sec. Let me change this to web so I can do some settings. Keep yourself safe. Keep yourself safe. Just give me a sec. Not this one. That is the only one that I want. Very stream. Stream my. But open the stream here. Why still I can't see? Because I close from here. Camera. Same thing. I still can't see the camera head. Why is this happening? Why is this happening? Good. Yes, it was working fine. Do. We need to work. Dude, why this very collaborate happy birthday? I can't find it. So big camera. Setting the stage. Enter the studio. You are watching me. I am watching you. But oh, I knew it. I knew it. I was like, okay. I need to do it. Like, Yeah, less of this one. But mm, finally, 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 fine. Let's go to Twitch. Is it working? Is it working? Oh, I remember. Sometimes I act like a dumb. No. Oh, there's a problem with the audio, dude. Oh, I'm tired. Oh, my bad. Uh, Hello. Uh, hello. 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 Okay. Hello. Now the biggest problem here, the voice is getting resounded. Dude, um, hello. Can you hear me? The biggest problem is now it's mute. If I unmute this thing, I can say, but the problem is now it's gonna resound. Dude, why I'm hearing this? I want to mute this thing. I think I need to go to audio. Audio is on. Hello. Mm, hello. Okay, that's it. And can you hear me? Can you hear me, guys? Now, what is happening on this dude? I feel like I should stop this one for time being. Hello? Yeah, host did muted your mic. Which host muted my mic? I'm the host, buddy. I'm the host. Hello? Dude, this is getting out of hand. Now biggest problem is I get that. Play with. I don't know. No. Well, now the biggest problem is I won't hear voice from this side. Right? Can you hear me? You can hear me, right? Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so I mute this one and oh man, God bless everyone. Don't tell me this is no. Okay, let's just start, dude. I need to study. I will look after this later. Okay, so let me quickly go here. So let me switch to my this stream. Okay, guys, I think we are very good on this one. I will stop so that it doesn't download the video. It here stays here. Um, the first link that we need to go is our GitHub link. I already wasted too much time to it. I should not have. Sometimes you do the things that you don't want to do. Sometimes you do the things that you have to do it. I will just check if the voice quality is good enough. Hello, is a delay here. So let's go here. Dude, I already wasted too much time to it. I should not have. So I can say voice quality is good enough. Okay, so you must have seen the corresponding what exactly we gonna reiterate today, and then we're gonna start learning. Today I wasted a lot of time, so I will make sure that I try to make the things as crisp as possible for learning the things that we learned yesterday. So yesterday, let me start my note as well. So it's easy to demonstrate what we were thinking was our learning so far. So it's day eight. And we're gonna learn about constraints, right? Mhm. Let's quickly go in this one. Bigger picture. So far we understood that when we are creating the table structure using the create statement, create table and then table name, right? Was our understanding. We understood one more thing that while we are creating, there is always a chance because end of the day, what is happening? Table we are creating is nothing but visually is an Excel, right? Excel or row and column like this. Visually, I'm talking about visual, how we look at this one, right? But the software that is compiling this data set into an organized way that we call database, right? Is relational database management system. That right? So what happened? They create a structure that they're gonna be a database in which I will have one schema, and under the schema I will have multiple table of student. That's why I call this schema as a student and this as a university, as a database university. So this university database will have all the data related with the entities that are inside this in universe. So that is university, right? So student is the one, and I created one schema that totally dedicated towards all the data sets or all the your table formatted data of a student into this one, right? There's some relationship. So now we define how we need to define is we use two keywords from SQL: create table, and then we use table name and parenthesis followed by colon to make sure that this and execution at this point. So it will start executing from this point to this point, right? And see how I'm structurizing. I don't bother how it will connect, how will it execute, what it has to take, what it doesn't have to take, where you have to register, because everything will be taken care by relational database management system. All I have to do is to send my request, my query, or my demands. And that exactly why L in SQL is declarative language. We just query, we just send our request, and it will take care by default at the back. That's why it's the best example of abstraction. We don't have to bother like what assembly language it use, how we gonna compile, what the standard, what's the uh, step he need to follow to create this thing. No, we just tell him this is a draft, create a table according to this draft. That's why we just give instruction of what we want. We don't even give instruction, we give what our request is. We demand, we query, we ask. But all the other language like Python, your Java, these are instruction based. You need to give them instruction like a baby, do this, do this. So the best example of this one is in Python, Java, you are the manager who work to do complete the things. Here you are a client who interact with this manager and he will do the things in your behalf. You see the difference? In SQL, you are here, client side. In Python and Java, you are here. That's why SQL is nothing but a declarative language. Okay. So now here you need to put column name followed by column data type. And if it's more than one, you need to separate this by comma separation. Only the last column detail will not have comma. That indicates that it is the end. This is the end. Comma is being replaced by this one. Okay. So it's an indication these many columns he need to create and he have created as such. But we have created. So ultimately what is happening when we use create table and table name, I give a blueprint to our relational database management system about that if an entity means detail of an object, detail of an object comes, and he said that this entity belongs to your relational database management system ecosystem where it's gonna reside in a database called university inside the schema of a student under the table of student personal detail. Okay, this is the same example of this is your building is your database, then these floors are your schema, and the the rooms in which you're gonna stay is your tables. And the person who manage everything, he is the one who will on demand create more buildings, more floors, or may create more buildings, or may create more rooms. This is your operational manager of this thing, but nothing relation database management system. Okay. So what it does, it communicate with client, it communicate, and he work as a manager, he complete all the ask request from the client side. So he does both. He listen to the client and then he work at the back end to complete the things. He does both of them. And that's what the Postgres work on the client server client based architecture that we already done it. There's a lot of video, but in future, if we revise all this thing, I will get back to that one. Okay. So now he knows, now here he have a blueprint with his hand that for this table or this room, right? For this room, so I told you that this manager have the authority to design your floor based on the requirement, and your floor design is based on the rooms, but nothing but tables. Now he know on the details side, he need to get couple of things that he need to have, right? First one was the student name, then student age, and then student address that we learned or we created, and ultimately we created one university ID, right? And this was text, that means it should have string value, it should be integer, it should have value, address text again, and this one is again integer. We understood. That's basic. One thing, a very basic thing, very basic. If there is an entity or a value for an entity or the corresponding characteristic of an entity like human, this is a student is coming. If he's a student, definitely he should belong to a university. That means this cannot be empty when he send his information. So you remember I told you in table every row represent one entity or object. So this is the object, this is the person, because this is a student table, right? So it will hold all the corresponding information about the student. So a new student is coming, his information has to be fed into this table. That's our requirement, right? So every column here represent characteristic or an information about characteristic or attribute, or in simple term it represent information about the object. Okay, so row is object, represent a complete object, and all the column that combine or constitute together represent an object, and individually these are nothing but the characteristic or the information about that student, right? For example, here the table represent the collection of students or the group of students, right, with their personal information. That's the crux of this entity, right? Or entity that gonna reside in this table, student personal detail. What are the information we gonna store here for every student whose information we need to store? Student name, student age, student address, and university ID. One thing we understood is general thinking. That's how we're gonna represent. So what we do in SQL, whatever the logic work on the real world, we are trying to replicate in our programming world. So if if a person who is trying to store his information into this table, a very basic question is if that means he should belong to a university by default. That means this value, this cannot be empty at any given point of time. Okay, he sent his information. Suppose I came and I was like, I'm a student and I want to store my information here. Okay, give me information. He said, I asked him your name. Okay, I said Nathan. Your age, let's consider 20 typing. Okay, now my address. Okay, this is my address. My university ID. Well, I don't have a university ID. Here's the red flag. Why you don't have a university ID? If you consider yourself as a student, you get the student as a tag when you enroll yourself in a university. You cannot justify yourself as a student if you are not, if you don't belong to an institute or educational institute, right? That means when we creating that blueprint, we need to inform release management system that whenever somebody try to put his information as an entity, you need to make that He gives his information of university ID. It cannot be empty. It cannot be empty. You cannot put this value. Finding this column thing, we need to put a constraint here. That column name university underscore ID integer. And now we need to put is not null. It cannot be empty. Null represent that emptiness. Remember, there's a difference between empty string and void. Empty string means there is a string, it's gonna hold a string. It's a string. But right now the number of string it have is zero. The second statement is it has nothing. You see the difference. It is still is a string with zero number of alphabet or character. It is empty. There's a huge difference between these two. Okay. So you understood why we try to come up with the constraint. Constraint we try to apply on the characteristics or attribute of the entities, or in simple term we try to apply constraint or rules on the information entity provides for a table or SQL table. Why? To make sure valid information reside in table. Why this is important? Because then it will make sure ensure when we do computation, we try to get some insightful information, it always yield the right result. Let me give an example. So someday a student came, now he provided his ID, his name, his address, but he never gave his age. Is it possible? Somebody is born, he's a student, he won't have an age, right? He should have an age. What exactly that means? It means that you should get the age of a student. So that means age is can't be not null. Okay, it cannot be empty. First, second, there is always some people who try to mess up, right? And they will put their age. Let's see if I put my age as -10. Let's put my age to 10,000. Possible answer is completely no. 100 can be fine. 200 can be fine. But 500-year old, some guy who's like 500 year try to be into a college. Does that make sense? By 500 years old, that means to get legit and valid information inside those characteristic slots of this the corresponding entity value, you should define certain filters. Okay, so answer is very simple. This is the entity. It can be living object or is inanimated object. He comes to relational database management system and say that I want to store my information inside this database, inside this table, right? So he will go and check, okay, in this one I have a database, I have a table. He was like, okay, give me your details. So like he said, like there are four column name. Okay, he gave his name. Okay, my name is this. Age plus. He was like, I don't have age. Third is like your address. Okay, he gave the address. Then university ID. He gave the university ID. When he tried to take this and try to fill this into this table, corresponding entity information, this one, he found that age cannot be not null. It cannot be empty. Second, so he get back to him and in minute he said this value cannot be stored in this table because your age doesn't fulfill this characteristic. It has to be have some age. It was like, okay, let me try something else. He said like, okay, all the details are same. My age is -100. Now he goes back again. He check -100, and that's where there was one more concept that the value should be greater than 1 or 0. Age should be greater than 0. Okay, age should be greater than 0. And it was like, again, it does not compile with our rule of age greater than 0. He was like, okay, let me check again. Then he come for the third time. He was like, okay, my age right now is 500. You check again. You put a filter that age for a student cannot exceed more than 50-year-old. He was like, no, again it cannot apply. Finally, he was like, okay, I'm getting late. I need to put the right information. So he put like, I'm right now 20 years old. Now he goes back. He check age is not a, okay, yes, it has a value. Is the value greater than 20? A 0? Yes. Is the age of the students less than 50? Yes. That means this particular info set of information that represent this entity is legit valid. Now we can insert it as this individual. And then in the table, you create that entry. So constraints make sure that data integrity remains or it filter out the non-legit values. So constraint become really, really important. And that's something we're gonna learn in this one. Do we have any questions? Let me quickly check. Nobody joined, so we are good. Okay. So okay, constraints are important. Let's quickly go to the constraints. EG, EG, PostgreSQL document. Uh, some definition. Okay, so let's revise few things before we move. Okay, so we learned that we try to make sure that certain level of rules are being followed in order to maintain that data integrity or maintain the legit values or information for a corresponding entity. That's what's it. So during the time when you create this blueprint, like how and what kind of a data can be stored into this table, there are few things we can play with the columns, right? So I told you that there is a possibility that someone might try to put empty value. So obviously the first thing we learn is put a constraint of not null. That means if an entity comes and try to put the value inside a table, he cannot do it until unless he fulfill this condition for that information. Okay. So to put the value inside this one, he need to give a set of information that matches with this structure. Same order, same number of column, right? And same data type. He check all the constraint, everything good he put into this one. This is the first thing that we can do with on a column. When I say column, it means information of an entity. Or on a simple term or the term you usually use, attribute or characteristic of the entity. You need this. Okay. This is the first thing you can do with the column that you define in your create table logic. The second thing, now suppose what happened. There is always a time when you know there is a default value for a particular information about entity. That should be by default. In case it doesn't have this value, so by default put this one. Okay. Let me give you the best example. Where I work, I if I'm doing a morning shift, I need to make sure that in the system I put the temperature of a fridge or a a frozen fridge, like fridge that we use it to keep our muffins or like all the food item frozen. Okay, so currently for the last 6 months we are not using it, and no matter what, its temperature stay at 30. So I just open it, I check if it's working or not. It's working. By default I put it 30 degrees Celsius, minus 30 degrees Celsius. You got it. So In case if we are not using it and I know it's working, there's no point of keeping the thing there and check. Uh, I don't. We are not using it because we need to give it back to some other places. So that's why it's fine to do this one. But make sure that every time you use this thing. But what I want to say, there's always a time when you have to put a default value in case you don't have the actual values. How we do it in SQL. So if somebody tried to enforce his information into a table, okay, that this is my information, put it there. In the entire information, we will check one by one if these information fulfill all the rules corresponding to a column. And we saw one particular piece of information or attribute or characteristic or information of this one that is empty. And in our blueprint, we wrote that if for this particular, what we did, uh, what do it- for this particular one, if we found that the value is empty, what we do before inserting, we will replace it with the default value, default value, and then we will go with the this default value. That's how we do it. Okay. And how we can perform using a keyword called the default. Okay. How it's gonna look? Create table, then table name, then brackets, and then empty. All the other columns, comma, comma, comma separate, and the last column, suppose, is the default value. Say, how can we put a default value? What can be default value? Okay, like temperature. Okay, so we are measuring the temperature of a machine. In case you don't measure it, by default it's gonna put minus 30 degree, minus 30 degree. Okay, so I can write the column name as this one column name followed by column data type. So column name was fridge underscore 01. This is the name. And what we need to put data type. So data type is obviously integer because we are putting whole number. Okay, it's gonna be whole number. But we know in case there is empty value coming in for this particular record, we need to replace this one with a default value of minus 30. So we will write the default minus 30 and voila, we are done. So default uses this one. So do you think in the default value we can simply keep only this integer value or this primitive data types? Expressions as well. Expression is nothing but combination of multiple things, like you can put like expression x plus y is an expression. Okay. I will give you the legit expression value, that is current time stamp. So put this one as a default value here. Default for, you can say, insert time, and you put timestamp as your data type. So insert time is your column name, timestamp is your column data type, and default value is the current time. So when you start working on a SQL, you will always, it's an experience time. Okay, experience time will tell you. So when you create table, you always have one extra column called insert time. This gives you information when this data came into my table. When, because table is the most granular level of entity in a database. If I know when it come in the database, I know when this data came into my database or my system altogether, right? And how we can do it? We can create one more column with the name of insert inst underscore timestamp. And this is the short we use because sometimes the big names is complex type. So people make it short for column that is basically for us as a developer to compute, and this one not for the user, because for that when we have to put a very detailed name. We will learn about this one with the process as I put the 60% of my knowledge. Other things I will learn with you guys. Then we put timestamp as data type, when default current underscore timestamp. So this is an expression in PostgreSQL. I think in many other data relational database management system do offer the same thing. It will give you timestamp of date and time. For example, today date is suppose 5th Feb 2026. Currently is 13/12/01, and then some. Wait a second. So it will store it like so I know on which date, on which time, on millisecond this particular record was inserted into my table. Best one. This is the best. Correct? Because it's a null value will automatically insert into this one. Okay. Second thing that we learned yesterday was the syntax of insert for this kind of a default value. Okay. Suppose this insert column I created for my student detail. So student name, student age, student address, then university ID, and then this insert one. This whole group of information should be retrieved or should be received in order to be inserted into the table. We know that it have a default value, so in case we don't receive this value, we can bypass it with the default value. And for other one, for the age, we apply certain checks and rules that we need to ensure. First one is it should be not null. That means it should always have a value. And the age should be always greater than 0 and age should be always less than 50. These are the three things we need to check for this one, right? So how we write it, create table, table name was student. Now I'm using the short names. Okay, this is how in IT work. You don't put full name every time. If it's an internal object, you can put it that you understand and easy to read because you can put more words. That means more in detail. Student, personal detail. Okay, detail. Detail. I also was surprised. A shorthand name when I saw it for the first time. Okay, they are using this one. This is interesting because when I was working in college, I was studying in the college, not working. Because my father was working to pay my tuition, but I got the scholarship as well. So half of the university time I paid my fees, and I was in the top colleges, so my fees was relatively much cheaper than my friends. Like one third of my friend who was working, no, not working, but who was studying in a private college. So I got good deal. Okay, so let's quickly come here. So it was column name now, and column data type, and if there's a condition that we need to follow in this search. Okay, so student and then for name, this gonna be text, and I don't put any restriction here time being, but you should put not null because every student should have a name. Okay, so let's put it not null. That means if somebody tried to give relational database management system is information like three, name, age, address, university ID, and then your insert time. So if you try to give an empty name as an information, he will like stop buddy. I checked the protocols and the name should have a value. So and it should be text. You cannot put integer as well. Okay. So that's the thing. Then we will write a student age that's gonna be integer. First is not null. That's the condition I put. And then we put a constraint that we need to check the value. So we can put check if age if this one student age is greater than 0 and student age less than 50. So check is the condition that gonna say whether you will be inserted into this table or not. We should always retrieve a true value for this statement or this expression because it's an expression, right? Expression is nothing but the combination of different operation you need to perform. True value, then you will get the answer. Here's the twist. When you compare null with some value, it's always empty null. There's no positive and negative. I need to check this one, but that's how I learn. I think you can check very simply. Let me check now this one. It's interesting when you learn something and you find, okay, I can do this one as well. Oh, why not? Okay, let's run here. Oh no, 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 no. Doesn't matter. I am well ensure that data integrity remain there. Okay, so select one greater than two. I just need to run this particular query, so I will just execute query. It's a false statement. You see, that means this expression that you're trying to identify gives a false statement. And if you put this into that check condition, since it gives false, that means all the record that gonna fall into your table will be discarded by default. So this is one of those trick when you want to play with your friend, you will replace this name with something and you define the values somewhere, right? And when it hit, he thought like he put a proper name for this one, okay? And he thought that this name represents some values and it should be proper. We will never able to find out that you have hard coded this value somewhere and now you are using, suppose the proper name, you write the proper column names, change it here and there, and they won't be able to find it out that you by default put some default value and now it is failing because you put in the check condition that you put like something like check. Okay, so what I want to say is like if you want to mess up with your friends, so you define two attribute two variables. Suppose we student fee and a student paid fee. Okay, and by default you put this value as 1,000 somewhere. Along the side somewhere you put it by default as 999. Okay, and this is and you in your DDL or when you create that statement of create table of this one, you define a student uh, uh, has a student paid fee and you check with the condition like student fee should be equals to student paid fee. So if this condition is satisfied, okay, then only the entire data set become a legit value. If not, you need to discard it. That's how check work. If not, let's confirm this one. So SQL check constraint. If a record failed to oblige with the check statement, does it drop the record or put null to that column? Check the constraint now. I think we will go to cloud AI. So when you have this kind of thing and you don't want to waste your time looking for here and there, simply go to cloud. I agree to enter consumer terms. Oh, let me switch to this one. Meanwhile, I'm putting this information 2206 and 49 399. I'm just trying to get understood. Mr. X. That is taking more time than I thought. Okay, let me get back to you. Okay, so let's put this on. Meanwhile, we check. So the check constraint is used to limit the value range that can be placed in a column. If you define a check constraint on a column, it will allow uh like if you define a check constraint on a column, it will allow only certain value for this column. If you define check constraint on a table, it limit the value in a certain column based on value in other column in a row. So it does check this way, but question is, does it drop or like it would roll? Okay. So when a record fails a check constraint, neither happen. It does the following. The entire insert or update statement is rejected and rolled back. The record is not inserted at all. So I was right. It dropped that one. Or update is not applied. The database raise an error and return the it raise an error. Let's quickly check, dude. Why don't we check it? That's why we have this thing, right? So currently we will put this way. So I will put table and I will put drop table if exists employees, right? So it will drop it if it exists. If not, it will create one. And then we need to check. If you see here, what we are trying to do, we are trying to create this table employee with ID as integer, age checking it should be greater than 18 to make it good out of us. So now it's send us for drop table if exist. What happened here, dude? Oh, this is the one. You need to read the statement properly. Now, if you see here what it says, new row for the relational employees violated, check print this one, employee check age, this one. So if you see here, I put a constraint check with age should be greater than 18. And interesting part, this is really interesting. You see it. Read that row. New row for relational relation. So when we say relation, it's nothing but the table, because in a schema all the tables that are related with one another is being stored. That's why you can also say relation employee. There should be actually relatives relative. We put two relative together. So relation employees while check constraint employee a check. See here, have we defined anywhere employee a check, but why it has a name called employee a check? We don't have it. Because you need to define a name for your constraint. If not, system will do it by default. And it's a good practice to do that one. For example, if I look here, constraint, and then I put, it should be any name, but uh, I put the column name because column name is very, very descriptive about the characteristic or the information for that individual or entity I'm trying to show. So each check. But you can put the table name as well, because it will be much more understanding if you want to access this constraint out of directly from your some table. So employee employees age check. Now it make it look much more. Now see the name is different, but let's put it self. Now this name will change. Just look at this. Let me take a screenshot for this one so we know that we are right on this one. So I have taken the screenshot. This is the one we have kept here as the name was defined like this one. Now let's run it again. What's the name? Employee a check self. Now the name is check. So if you're not putting constraint and the constraint name, it's simple, dude. Whatever we are create, like create table, create database, create a schema. Similarly, constraint and then constraint name. There is no create because by default it will come. It will understand you're trying to create. So constraint name, and then whatever the constraint we are putting 18. And you remember we put one more constraint, age should be greater than 18 and age should be less than equals to 50. Let's see if this logic also work. Okay, now let's change it to 18, because when we iterate it next time it will automatically drop, so we don't have to worry duplication or the insertion of the same element. Okay, so there's a problem near the exists. Oh yeah. So see, that's where you need to make sure the name is matching. Is matching, dude. There's a problem with this name. Exists employee. This look fine, but syntax error. Drop table if exists. Should I see if I do this? Okay, it's already exists. I think I know what. No, I don't know. Let's remove this one. Drop. See, sometimes it does do this thing. You need to do it one or more time. I don't know why it's happening, but I do observe that there is a query that execute fine if you run it after a couple of times. But this is not how should it roll. There's some problem here, either in my configuration or something, dude. I need to check this out. Anyways, data got recorded, right? So what will happen? We will also do one select statement. Select everything from employees. So when I say select, it simply doesn't mean select. It means you go read all the record one by one and then retrieve this data. So there is two things. Read all the record one by one. So it create, and you see we never defined that you iterate and get me all the columns. Star means all the column. You can define particular column like column age, that's it. Or you can define ID comma age, same. So it read iterate one by one. If you look here, see it failed at that time and then suddenly it is running now. I think there's a problem. You observe that thing, right? Anyone joined? Quickly catch if someone has any questions. No, that's fine. So I need to check on this one as well. What happened, dude? Dude, leave it. I need to finish this thing. So now let's run it again. You saw that there's one entry of, I will check this later. There's one entry for integer ID and then there's one entry for age 18. This is perfectly fine. Why don't we try? This means you can put multiple condition using AND statement. This is nothing but an expression. Let's check whether it's true. Is true. And both are true with the AND statement. Both true means the final is true. So check is true. If it fails, it throw an error that it fails into this check statement. It drop that statement, roll back and give you this one. So let's do one thing. Let's try to insert an age of 51. Let's run it. Again, it's shown an error that the check constraint that we have created. Because why this one? Sometime you the table is not one and two column. The object that you want to insert it may have multiple attributes that you want to store as the characteristic or the attribute of that table, right? It may be like 50 because one I know it has more than 200. And usually this is not right because you need to have very complex, but that was mostly kind of fact table, and fact does have this many columns, so you cannot. always go with the logic. It always ultimately depend which use case best fit. It's same as the data structure. There is a problem that you try to solve, and you saw that for this problem to solve, I need to use two things very extensively. One is search, second one is access. And you understood this data that I have in teacher is best fit with the shorted array. Then I can apply binary search and it will give me the maximum possible answer. That was the logic, right? And if you want to, if you don't, if the value that is coming for that scenario is coming dynamically, then you can switch from shorted array to binary array with the shorting. That's how it does. Newcom, it automatically inserted the right place, and again it take only log base 2 and time to search is position and insert with big of, and then search is log 2 and so ultimately log 2 and for data search, then log 1 to insert, and then log and again to search. It become completely log and total time to get my things done. So now you understand based on problem, you try to see what operation you need to perform. Based on that one, you put that data according to that one, right? Similarly here as well, you need to understand what the requirement, and based on that one you can create your things. So how about I put 50 and try to execute. Now we have to record with the minimum value and the maximum value. What happen if I put 49.99? Remember, my column can allow on my column or my attribute of the entity should have integer value. But what as an individual I'm providing a numeric value. See, it round off. So it is doing implicit by self rounding the value based on the information we have given. So it just round off to 50. Okay, so we learn default, we learn the constraint not null, then we learn about the uh to the check statement, right? Now identity and generate column, two things that we need to learn again, and very quickly I will tell you. I need to stop today here. Dude, I'm taking more time than required. We are falling behind. But I think it's good that we are learning this one. So apart from this thing, two more things that we learned yesterday for a column that we can leverage. Okay, this was the constraint, and we're gonna learn more about this one. This one is value addition. Okay, so you remember right now the employee ID, we are by default giving it ID 1, 2, 3. You know, for every record we need to give a new value because we need to keep on doing it. This is a manual work, and it was observed that this thing is being done by many people. That means if I create something very automatic thing that can do it for you, then you don't need to do it by yourself. So the workload of so many people can be relieved. Remember, you need to create a solution that can be used by mass a lot of people. Then only it is saleable, then only it have a value, right? So I saw a lot of people are struggling to write this IDs manually. So SQL or PostgreSQL, what they did, they come up with a logic of creating a keyword serial. So now when you define your data type, you simply write ID and you put serial. And you'll be like, Nathan, is it a data type? Answer is no. That's an interesting fact. It does look like a data type because you are defining with this one, but at the back end, what is happening is this serial is replaced by ID, and it was right ID and serial, right? Serial. This is replaced as ID. See here, integer, then next value, and our table name was employee, right? Employees serial. And once that is done, before this one, it will create one serial. Create series employees series, and it will give the ownership to tables. This one. So it will write one more statement, give ownership of employee series to employees table. So create a series. It will give you one memory space. This is empty space, right? It is just created. There is no initialization. There is no value addition. It's an empty box at the moment. Empty box, right? It's a void inside this one. But in this one, you can do two things. When you define a series with say sub-series name, you have two options. Okay, when you write create series name, it will create an empty box for you. When you write current value and then give the series name, series nm, it will give you the value inside it. Since there is nothing, it will throw an error. Then is next value, and then you put it. What it will does, whatever the value it has, it will add one more in it. Won't return anything, but it will return the value added one to that. So right now is empty. It initialize with a one. When the next time you call it, now it was empty here, right? Once this executed, it was empty. When is it was empty here? When it's executed, it's one. So it will return. So initially it was empty, right? When I call next value for the series name, this one, whatever it will become one here. When again I call it series name, it will become two, and so on. Let's do it this one, so you will understand better with the example. Okay. So uh, create series. I think I'm wrong with the name. So let's search it. That's how we learn it, right? How to create a series in PostgreSQL. No credit needed. I love this people. But how to create? Start one with the series, Postgres series. How to create a sequence? Ah, it's a sequence, not series. Sequence. My bad. See, sequence. So now we will remember. So create sequence with a sequence name. What? Employee, because we are creating sequence for employee table, right? Employees underscore ID. What we are creating series. So it's better if you go with sequence. So for what we are creating series. For whom we are creating for employees table, and for which attribute we are creating, for ID. So what we are creating, for whom we are creating, and what we are creating. What, whom, and what, whom. So what we are creating, for whom we are creating, again what we are creating. Uh, which, for which we are creating, for which we are creating. What, whom, which. What we are creating, for who, what we are creating, whom, for whom we are creating. For, I think what should be fun. And we understood right which attribute we are calling. So we are creating a sequence of this one. And then again, what we're gonna do, we need to redefine this statement. We have created one series sequence and employee where ID is integer, but we will replace with we don't need to replace it. Leave it. What we need to do, we need to check. So right first select cur value. Is it cur value, right? Set post create. This is the one. So create discrete create select temporal unlock if not access data type increase method. Drop. That's why I don't like this one. PostgreSQL sequence. Next well and current cur. See cur value. This is the one. CURRVL cur value. Sometimes you just search it, you will get. Cur value is right. And then we put sequence name, that is this one. And it should give me a failure because it just has created a space, but there is no initialization. See, uh, column does not exist. Okay, now if I right select next well and the same thing, do you think it will work? It doesn't exist. Why? Drop sequence if exists. Notice, so it is not able to create this thing, create sequence. There's a problem with the statement itself. So let me check it. Wow. Postgres sequence format. Uh, how to create a sequence? Create unlocks whatever sequence if not exist as data type and sequence name. Increment by one minimum value. So let's as integer. Maybe let's see if it works. As integer. Column. Why column it's coming like that? Create sequence. Then sequence name as one second. Then how to create a sequence in PostgreSQL. I can't find it. Just Google. Just create sequence name is full syntax. Create sequence my sequence name. Why it doesn't work? Let's put this one. Why it was not working for this one? The command create basic default progression doesn't as a backend. So mine was failing, right? Let's do this one. Column error, employee ID, series employee ID. Dude, it worked now. Why this cola very ID? Now that's run. Huh? See, I told you there's a problem I'm facing. I don't know because why. Uh, 27. Okay, how? I think I am making mistake when I'm calling it next well. Create. Oh, I know what mistake I made. So, dude, I thought like this is a name, it should be acted as a variable, but we need to send it like this as a string value. This doesn't make sense to me. I think there's a problem with my understanding here. But before we proceed to this one, we need to check the current value. Let's check this out. So the error current value of a sequence, this is not yet defined. So that means this statement give you memory block without anything into it. And when you try to get that the current value, you are basically getting empty here. An empty here for this logic doesn't make sense because it's a series. You need to have a value in a series. So it justified this error. So now what we will do, we will just increase this value. Let's see. Now, what it does next value is always give the next value. Since it is empty, it will start with the one. So sequence in PostgreSQL or most of this one start with one. So now if I do this one, see this is one, right? If I just copy paste it and reuse this one, see it become two. If I do it one more time, it will become three. So that's exactly what this one, your sequence does. Okay, basically at the back end of serial, it is the sequence that is working. But right now, let's do one more thing here. Now we understood this one. What we need, we don't need to drop. Okay, so now let's try to use the series. Okay, and we will check that out. So we understood series is not a data type, but sequence at the end of the day that Postgres at the backend take care of this. And that's the beauty of Strike. I'm not telling it to do it. It is doing it by default. So it's more of declarative. I need series, it give it to me. And everything is taken care of by management system, so I don't have to worry. So here instead of int, I will write series, serial. Blue PostgreSQL uh, serial. Seedless is right, right? Why is us serial? Okay, documentation in Malik tag Postgres. Sequence was a serial. Okay, I love Stack Overflow. Leave it out. Let's type here. Uh, Return the last value generated in these sessions. Okay, I need to check this one. Last well. Okay, so it means it will store the value until unless my entire connection is off. Does that mean that? Dun, 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 dun. Let me check this one. So till here it's gonna have one value, right? If I execute this thing. Okay, let's execute this one. Why this color very cool? So curve value is one. Now this is about sequence. Sequence. Now we will do one more thing and select the curve value, and we will just put this thing. Okay, okay, now we need to do it again. My bad, my bad, my bad. So one, I think one is always very cheap. Let's make it two. So this two I will remove it. This two I will, no, this two, but entire this thing I will just remove. Now I will check three things. Say stored. Even when my execution was empty, it still hold that value because it is stored that in a separate memory container. So no matter how many times you will run it, it will always keep the latest information. Say 4, 5, 6. But what I want is to understand this one. Generate from the last session. 7, 8. Yep, yep. But let's try something else. Postgres 18. It is 2. That means I created one sequence here. I used it and the value, because this connection is still not, or we are creating a sequence somewhere. Create table, create table, create table, default. See serial. I'm creating here. I need to check how. I think it's the same. Until unless this session is closed, whatever the last value I hold, it will return me. But if that's the case, I can use the curve value as well, right? Or is it because multiple stream going to the same? No, doesn't make sense. Possible. I think I need to check this one. What does that mean? Leave it. I have only like 10 minutes left. I will quickly. ID serial. Okay, serial is working. So serial, this one, if I run it and then we will put it drop right here. So it is creating, that means our serial as a data type is working, but serial is nothing but a compact of sequence. Boom, 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 boom. Now we will insert. Okay, and the best part is here that we define like ID and age. ID is serial. That means we don't have to give it. We can simply remove this thing. I put simply age, and we will give age, and then we will select star from employees, right? That's it. So we got 1 and 2 automatically because it's a serial. Okay. But you feel like, okay, I need to keep the ID here just to look, match the book, right? That's all. So yeah, you can put default here. So what it indicate to our executor that whatever the default value I have defined for this one, just get that one for me. Again, 1 and 2 is also fine. Interesting part here in serial, I need to think, can I forcefully add a value to this one? That was my question. Let's add this one. And it does. It does. And that's the problem here. So what my initial intention with the serial is, I create IDs for individuals such that it always give me unique value. But with this one, what gonna happen? Like suppose I put it like wait, now it's 1 3, but now I insert three more time with age 19, age 23, and age 34. Now 3 and 3 is repeated because you literally messed up with the sequence. Is one, it was supposed to be 2, but you put the value 2, so it doesn't run that next value. So it still remain 1, but you get 3. Then in the next statement, it did go to the next one, and it get messed up here. Now one thing that I really want to do here, can I put null here? Does it handle null? Yes, it should be. Yep, it does. You cannot put a null. That means default. Here, where you define. Here, when you write integer for the sequence, it does write that not null. So it cannot have empty value. So if I run here, it should work completely fine. You get the value 1, 2, 3. So you understand series is to give the sequence to a column, but it never gave the promise that it will definitely give you primary keys because manually you can mess up. And that's where the logic of identity comes. Right. So you can use sequence as this. You can use the serial as a data type. That's completely fine. But there is no concept of serial in other data structure. There is a concept of similar identity. And you remember this language to be compiled or compliance to be compliance with mandatory features with SQL to resemble more into like SQL so people can move from one platform to another based on the requirement of the project or the administrator or the organization. They don't have to learn a lot because everything is matched. That's why a manual guide or a guide that is master guide that every relational database management system should follow when they create their own SQL. So they were using serial, and something similar was adopted by SQL later, and it became a golden guide that we will use identity. So now in Postgres was like, okay, everyone is using identity. Why I am still using serial? Because now people will be confused. They need to learn something more. And they were like, okay, why don't I create one more method where I am doing the same thing but using the keyword identity? And that's how we got the identity in Postgres. So again, you don't have to do much. Simply create this thing. And here you will be writing the data type you want it, integer, obviously. You put not null. So it ensure that there is no value that is coming as null into this one. Okay. Then you will be like generate. Okay, let's remove timing. Generated uh always. What identity? As all as identity. Mhm. Now I will insert it like this. And I will call them twice. So okay, see here. Now it is failing on number 60, which was initially getting passed by serial. And what is say insert non-default value into ID? It says you're putting a value into non-default value. So let's comment this out and learn it. See, it does. So I'm going to run it and see. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now it ensure that okay, everything is going cool, everything is fine. I am getting the values. So now what I should do, let's check for the null. What it does for the null. Does it handle the null properly? Now again, problem. We are trying to rewrite, we are trying to overwrite a value that is restricted for any manual change. That means you have to retrieve it back to default. Now 1, 2, 3, 4. So what happened is like it also makes sure that null value is being reported. You cannot put a null value, right? Now since you are replacing serial by identity, that means that you need to make sure that identity also have all the feature of serial. That's why, right? When you go for upgradation, what happened? You make sure the previous ability still remain and you add more ability to that one. Any question before I move? Dude, is it the thing that okay, there is no one, that's fine. Okay, so that means identity should have more feature than the existing one. So we talk about the new feature that is to make sure that everything is there without manual intervention. You cannot change it. Now, what happened when you want to change it the same as you are doing in serial? And there are cases where you have to do it. You need to make sure when there is null value, when there is empty value, you replace it with a new number or number that is not being repeated previously. Second thing, you need to ensure that whatever the value comes, it get precedence and it value stored. Same as what we are doing in the serial, right? Here in serial, whatever the default value is coming, it was generating a sequential value and started inserting it. But when it receive a value from a user or entity, it give precedence to that one, right? So same thing we need to apply here. And we does that. Okay. So identity. So no user input and no user precedence. No manual interface. Manual interface. Okay. And now we go with entity where we give the precedence. So yes, manual precedence. User value get precedence. Yes. Okay. Don't forget the precedence. And how to do it is very simple. We will simply go here, get everything from there, paste it, and here instead of always is like giving that keyword that it should follow these rules. Okay, generated identity. It give the sequence always. But if you replace it by default, that means you make identity sequence work when there is a default. So when there is a default, by default you put the entity. So yeah, like generated means you generate. When you generate, you write always. That means you always generate entity. But by default means when there is a default value, default is always miss null values or empty values, then you create. Now this one should work. See here, one, then it get user input as a precedent, it put three, then 2, 3, 4. So this one and serial problem is in both the case the user gets precedence, but in the upper one identity of the sequence gets precedence. So that means there is no human intervention until unless you manually do that. That's why this doesn't ensure again uniqueness or every value getting a primary values. Okay. And the biggest problem is this also doesn't guarantee it gonna be primary key because there is one function or one combination of keywords that can help you again give user a precedence. the one that is your override sequence value or default value, something like this. So to ensure that it always have that uniqueness 1 2 3 4 5, you add this primary key as well. So in case somebody being very hacker and try to override this value or give the user as a precedence from the backdoor, you have one more statement here, primary key, that ensure even if you are giving it a user value, it doesn't match from any of the existing value in that column, and you give a value that is unique to that particular record. So identity does give you the primary key until you don't do it manually. So there is always a loophole. Make sure there is no loophole. And even somebody use the backdoor to update the value for user or give the user precedence, you put the primary key as a check again, which ensure the value that you're inserting is inserted as a unique value to that column. So I think we are very clear with this one. Anything in this topic that is left so far, I will quickly check on this one. And again, our generated column is nothing when you generate value from other columns. See, generate always generate by default as this one. So this was the prime example of both identity and generated by. So generated is nothing but to drive a value to a column using some expression or method or using some other columns. And you did it through sequence with two logic, always and by default. Again, same. If always is like, then it's gonna by default it will create this one. It won't take empty value or it won't take value from the user. This type of column is for our usage developer user where they want to create columns which have predefined values calculated, and it always get refreshed when we are trying to use the values. Second one, you can use by default. If you want to put user preference more, then you can do it. The best example was age. If somebody give the age is okay, if not, by default you put 18. I think we are very clear with the structure for generator as well. Generated always or by default, as after that you will put your expression or logic. So I think with this we can say that we are literally good with column types, and we did check a couple of constraints like not null. We checked this thing. We checked the primary key. I think we need to go tomorrow. We will go one more time this thing as a revision, and then we will simply jump here this one. And tomorrow I think we will be able to complete this thing. We are taking one more day, but I think it's worth taking. Do you have any question or anything so far? What is this one is XP? Be the first in the leadership board by showing your support by sending live super chat. Okay, yesterday I received one and I'm really thankful, but that's fine. It's fun. Anyways, I need to do work and I need to go my part time as well. With this, I will wrap today's video. It's pleasure meeting you all. I hope you are learning.